Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our series of shirim on the Ramchal's Adir BaMarom on the Idrabba. And we're still in the territory where where Rabbeinu Ramchal is explaining to us the necessity of the Zohar HaKadosh at the end of days, and that entering into the Zohar HaKadosh, which is the secret of the in case of emergency break glass expression of Bina down to Malchus, which is correspondent to the Teva of Noach, which is correspondent to the Ma'ara of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is correspondent to the Ir Miklat, which is the secret of being saved in a spiritual way in spite of the undeservedness of it all, and that this emergent light that is there when above and below are not connected on a revealed way, so these momentary illuminations come about. The Chiddush of the Zohar HaKadosh, which Moshe Rabbeinu understood, which is why he had to retrieve the neshama of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Elisa Lamar, and V'Shavisa Shevi, is because what Rabbi Shimon cultivated in the cave with Rav Elazar de Bray was something for Dore Doros. Already because Moshe Rabbeinu escaped from Mitzrayim and went above the Be'er and connected to Leah in that place, connected to the Etzem Haluz in that place, because Moshe Rabbeinu did it for us, so therefore any attempt of our escape, even when it's based on those moments of Bina opening Malchus up, in spite of the fact that the typical order is not working, they're considered as real because the aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu did it already, and all of us have an aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu in us. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought it down even farther as the new iteration of the light of Rabbi Shimon of Moshe Rabbeinu, as we're going to see, like we've spoken about in the Shirim on the Zohar, that there's always a chibur between Moshe, who's the Raya Mehemna, Min Hamayim Mishisihu, representative of that water, that Chachma, that Meimei HaChesed, and Rabbi Shimon, who's the Butzina de Nahora, the Eish, the fire of Bina, and the connection between the two of those. As Rabbi Nachman shows in the introduction to Sefer Likutei Moharan, in Shir Naim, it's talking about the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, and in L'chu Chazu, it's talking about the neshama of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's the secret of Emasai Ka'asimar. When will Mashiach arrive? When will the bitterness be removed? When will the Mariris go away? So it's the yichud between Moshe Rabbeinu and Raya Mehemna. Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And the yichud between those two tzaddikim, we're going to experience the illumination of being able to draw down this emergency in case of emergency break glass, light of Bina being Mashpiyat Malchus. It's now going to be available to us in a situated way. We will be able to open up the book of the Zohar and to Tachazi, come and see the book of the Zohar, and the book of the Zohar itself creates this emergency opening of Tevas Noach, of the Ir Miklat, of Ma'aras Rashbi. So what was once the lot of particular tzaddikim, through their efforts and through the openings that they created for us, we ourselves have access to these openings by way of the Sefer of the Zohar HaKadosh, by the Osios themselves, by the Asvin Da'araisa, that every time we open up this book, anytime a person learns any element of the Zohar HaKadosh, as we're going to see, they're already tasting of that light of Bina being Mashpiyat Malchus in that way where everything is illuminated specifically where I stand. And that's going to be why in Dara de Mashiach, in the generation prior to Mashiach Tzidkenu, and the struggles that come with that, it's specifically then that Kibarach Ha'am, that everyone is going to find the necessity of finding themselves in the safety of the Zohar HaKadosh. The Afarish L'cha'ata, says Rabbeinu Ramchal on Daf Lamed Aleph. The Afarish L'cha'ata, I'm going to explain to you now, what I mean to say when I say Dara de Mashiach, the generation of Mashiach, which is going to be the time that this illumination of the Zohar Ilah, the Zahira Ilah, that light of Bina that's Mashpia down to Malchus, that light of Tshuva, of Chayrus, of beginning again, of transformation, of refining everything in its root, in Hamtakas Adin and Besharasham, in Kula Hafach Lavan Tahur, in the Sharnun of Bina, all those places of Bina, they give us the ability to elevate all of the brokenness of Malchus and the secret of Mizois Oila. That Zois is Malchus, Mizois Oila min Midbar. That Malchus comes out of the Midbar, Midbar Matana, the emptiness of Malchus seems to be void like a Midbar, but it's specifically there that the gift comes from. It's specifically there that the Torah HaKadosh is revealed to us, Midbar Matana. And when we elevate the Zos of Malchus back to the Mi, of Mi Bara Eila, and the secret of Bina, so we bring the known reality of this world up to its supernal source in Eim Habanim Smecha, or in the Heilige Lashon of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, based on Tikkun Zohar, the yichud of Yira and Nora. Yira is Malchus. It's the existential fear that a person finds themselves in concerns, whatever it might be in the day-to-day experience of life. And then there's Nora, which is the wonder, which is the awe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu awakens by way of expressing his glory, his infinitude in the world. And all anxiety, all fall in fear is ultimately just vestiges of that previous orientation to awe. And our avoid in this world, as the Heilige Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh taught us, is to be mala our midos, to bring all of the Sheva midos and Afulos and to bring them back to the source in Bina to be mamtik them. So when I find myself with desire, instead of undoing that desire, cutting it away and repressing it or suppressing it, I have to uncover the Nakuda HaPnimis, which is the desire for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, abstract that Nakuda of love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for the Torah, for mitzvos, for Amunah, for Bitachon, for goodness, redirect that love from the base desire that I found myself in, extend it upwards, and connect myself back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So too with fear, so too with beautification of things, so too with endurance and gratitude and connectivity, etc. But when a person experiences fallen gevura, when a person finds themselves in yiros chitzonios, and anxiety and concern and fear and the uneasiness, so the avodah is to elevate it back up to noira, to be miyached the yichud of yira and nora, because when I come to find the true source of all of those day-to-day anxieties, which is ultimately in the pachad ha'elyon that I have in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, miyad yispardu kol polei oven, because I elevate all of my fears back up to that simple place. The Rav Soloveitchik, Sklusio Ganalenu, there was a psychiatrist who approached the Rav, and he said, why I love the liturgy, I love the tefillah on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but the one thing that I would recommend, said this person, from a therapeutic perspective, is to get rid of v'chein tein pachtacha, and so too, please place your fear upon us. He says, we live in the age of anxiety. There's no need for us to ask for that fear, or for more fear, or for more pathology to be placed upon us. And the Heilige Rav said that silly. The desire of v'chein tein pachtacha aleinu is not to add fear, it's to bring all of the other fears and their fallen nature back up to a rightful place. Because when a person orients their concern in this world and the uneasiness in this world to the desire to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as memela, all other fears are going to be subsumed within that, and I'll be able to direct myself towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my moments of fear. That's the secret of the yichud of yira and nora, of malchus coming back up to bina. The Zohar HaKadosh allows us to taste that in a revealed way, and that's necessary in the time of Darid the Mashiach. But Zak the Heilige Ramchal, what is Darid the Mashiach? Hini Amr Razal, Chazal have told us, Be'ikvasa the Mashiach chutzpah yiskei. Daf Memtes and Sota, which is right next, Amid Beis, which is right next to that Shar Hanun. Sota is the Inyan of Bina, which is why it's connected to Nazir, which is the secret of Keser, that it's only through the process of the Kina and the Ahava that's involved in the secret of Sota, which is ultimately where the Neshama of Shmuel, of Shimshon HaGivor comes from, of Shmuel rather. But this secret of Mem Tes Amud Beis in Maseches Sota represents the very edge where a person is at the brink of Shar Hanun. So be'ikvas ad Mashiach chutzpah yiska, there's going to be chutzpah around. The Inyan Zeh, what does this mean? Ki ikvas ad Mashiach yechevle HaMashiach. Ikvas ad Mashiach is going to be the time of the birth pangs of Mashiach, which we said are necessary, except if a person finds the Hamtakas Adin in the Zohar HaKadosh. That's ikvas ad Mashiach, the heels of the Mashiach. Daki kol ma'aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu poel, everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu performs in this world, expresses in this world, engages in this world by way of expression. Poel besod demus adam. Everything takes shape in the shape of a human being. Basari echazeh. On the one hand, we understand that the individual is a small world, and we also understand that the world is a small individual, meaning to say the shape and the dimensions and the makeup and the framing of the individual themselves, the human body and its anatomy. This represents the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to reveal the world, because it's all through our perspective. V'yimse ba'oso ha'pu'ula, ha'rosh v'haguf, v'chol ha'chalakim ha'nimsaim ba'adam. And in terms of the pu'ulos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is engaged with running the Welt on the level of Hanaga, so there's going to be this spiritual form that's formless, that is in the shape of a shapeless body, and it's going to be just as the body is sectioned into different parts, so too this shape of hashgacha, or the pu'ula, we know this from the secret of Adam Kadmon and the Yoshar, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world with three lines, 3 lines of hierarchical connectivity, right, left, and center. Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. Yamin, small, and Emsa. Kav Yamin, Kav Emsai, Kav small. As opposed to the Igulim, which was prior to any differentiation. Yeah, that's a higher level of the Adam. There's no distinction there, but still it doesn't operate in accordance with the anatomical framework of the spiritual model, and therefore it's devoid of its real functioning. The secret of Yosher is the Demusa Adam, the secret of Adam Kadmon Kavyachol, which is the in-between between the infinite and the finite. It's the graspability that we have of the infinite. And a person will find that corresponding to whatever is going on in the body, a person can come to extrapolate and understand the secret of unpacking the metaphor without trying to reduce the metaphor to something that can be unpacked or needs to be unpacked. They'll come to reflect the body and the experience of understanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so too, if there's a whole body of the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu expresses itself, and that's true in the shape of the world, then history is also going to experience that same shape. Olam Shana V'Nefesh. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in the secret of Olam, both in the shape of the soul, in the Nefesh, as well as in the shape of the year, as well as in time. And Galus itself, which is an orientation of time, it's a historical process, just as the body itself is going to have a head and a bottom, etc., so too time is going to have a beginning and an end. And so just as the Adam has a head and a body, just as spiritual expression has a Rosh and a Sof, so too Galus is also going to have this typical breakdown of a head and arms and legs of exile. When it comes to looking at exile, we'll be able to see the entire anatomy of the experience of exile, the head of exile, the arm of exile, the leg of exile, the chest of exile, the stomach of exile, all of the different variations of experiencing exile. And in accordance with the framework and the timing of Galus, the grand historical process through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to extend that middle period that seems to be disconnected from the unity of the beginning or the end, but is ultimately only there to bring out the depth of the unity of the beginning and the end by including the middle, which is the secret of everything the Ramchal is saying. Each and every part of the body represents a particular subset of years that corresponds to that stage in Geula. And if one were to graph a map of this mathematical equation and try and understand the different stages in accordance with the different various body parts, one can come to see theoretically how this element of Jewish history was more elevated towards the mind of Klal Yisrael, where the mind was under a state of exile. This one was more about the labor of Klal Yisrael, their arms. This one was more about the food and the kashrus. This one was more about the throat, the singing and the tunes. Every exile brings its own particular subset of symptoms, and Rabbeinu Ramchal is saying that all of this is correspondent and can be mapped back on to the body of exile, Kavyachol, which is just the reality that the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in this world, as well as in temporality and history, is going to be modeled after the human being, because that's the closest thing to ourselves. That's the framework of the metaphor. So every part of the body would have theoretically a different number of years that corresponds to exile. In the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, exile had reached the point of the chest, the chaza. Now the chaza, when it comes to Pnimiyas HaTorah, when it comes to the Arizal, there's something called shetach. Shetach. Shetach is the shiboilas hazaken, the edge of the beard, where the lights of the head are revealed. There's the chaza, which is the chest, where the lights begin to be revealed even further. And then there's the tabor, which is going to be the in-between place of the body, the separation between the upper part and the lower part, which is going to be another fundamental place in which the lights of Adam Kadmon are maskala themselves. The chaza represents in the Mishalim of the Arizal, in the system of the Arizal, that place where the lights that were being revealed, the Or Ein Sof, the Or HaChesed, the Or, that Hey Or of Bereshis, it remains contained within itself. It's not fundamentally revealed from the head down to the throat until it comes to a place of the chaza, until it comes to that metaphor of the chest. And in the area of the chest is where the concealment element stops expressing itself as fundamentally, and things begin to be revealed. They're chasadim megulim. Eitz HaChaim is the chasadim mechusim, It's the pleasure that is concealed. It's a pleasure that doesn't need to be felt. It's something that doesn't need to be murgash. It's something that doesn't need to be sensual in any sense. I don't have to be aware of it in order for it to be true. And then there's mitachas hachaza, where the lights are revealed, the chasadim hamagulim, which is the beginning of eitz hadas tovara, where a person now demands that there be something felt, that there be something murgash. And if I feel it, then it's real. If I don't feel it, it's not real. And that's the beginning, as the Rambam points out already, between the subjective growth of opinions based on taste. And so the times of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that time of Rabbi Shimon, in correspondence to exile, we had reached the place of the chazah, which means that the exilic stage of that point was that there was something new being revealed. There was a light being revealed, mitzad concealment, that needed a counteracting element of tikkun. Zelu umaseh. In that time of Rashbi, the hastara came to the place of the chazah, meaning going from the top down. The hastara was by the chazah, which is the place of hiskalus hachasadim. And so therefore, if that's closed off, and the hiskalus hachasadim is closed off, then the yisurin of that time period is going to be profound. There's going to be a concealment. There's going to be a hiddenness. Until that point, everything was concealed. The light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was not revealed yet, because corresponding to the stage of exile, we hadn't been at a point of revelation. The chasadim were still mechusa. We hadn't reached the chazah of exile. We hadn't reached the chest, so to speak, of exile. All of the lights and the light of the Zohar Kadosh was not revealed. Because like we said, even though Rashbi was doing what Moshe Rabbeinu did, and Moshe Rabbeinu was doing what Noach HaTzadik did, nevertheless, when it came to Moshe and Rashbi, something new took place in the sense that there was something that was there for future generations as well, that we could access. The Az, and at that time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in that time of exile, Niftach Hasisum Beheyos Hamakom Gorim Kach. Because of the time and the place, because Rabbi Shimon was the tzaddik of that moment in exile. So, in spite of the concealment of exile, there was a revelation of chasadim. And corresponding to that, his oirus of the chazah being the place of the openness of chasadim being revealed outwards, there was an opening to the concealment, which was going to be the secret of the Zohar HaKadosh. The tzarich sheteda, but a person has to really understand, in the grand history in the parts of Galus, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's generation stood by the chazah, by the chest. Dor Hadeya, Moshe Rabbeinu, they were by Das. But the two Mashiach and Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, the actual redemption itself, they're contained in the akvayim of this partzuf. The heels of the partzuf of exile, the grand totality of exile, when seen through a human perspective. So the heels, the thickest part where one does not even feel it anymore, that's the chiddush of the akvayim, that you don't even feel anything. It's a hastara shabatoich hastara, that one is not even aware of the concealment. Mashiach Tzidkenu finds himself, and the root of the neshama of Mashiach are those two akvayim of exile, the heels of exile. Ikvas of the Mashiach. Ach misham meirim ha'arus l'chol haguf. But let's not pigeonhole Mashiach Tzidkenu and the light of Mashiach to the heels, which is the very end of exile, which is where we find ourselves. Because every moment is ripe for redemption. Every moment, from the beginning to the end, there's an akud of tzaddik. From the head to the toes. Memela, so the light of Mashiach, the light of the end of history and the redemption of history, and that apocalyptic destruction of exile and the emergence of redemption, that's rooted fundamentally in the akvayim, in the heels, in the lowest part of exile. But that rootedness in the akvayim sends its light and sends messengers and sends expressions of itself throughout the body. Which means to say that there's an orchoizer of the actual arrival of Mashiach, which is talui in the akvayim of this parts of history, which has expressed itself upwards prior to its actual arrival, which is the secret of the Zichron Mashiach ben David Avdecha, the memory of Mashiach. Even though Mashiach hasn't come yet, there's still a memory of Mashiach, which is that Or Choser that comes up from the Akvayim, and it expresses itself across the Guf, which is why in the times of Rashbi there were Giluyim of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And anytime there's a Hisayrus to Geula, it's a result, theoretically, of one of these expressions of the Or Choser from the actual Or of Mashiach, which is by the Akvayim, which is the end of history, which enables every moment to be ripe for the arrival of Mashiach. which is the understanding that all the tzaddikim give about times that are ra'i for geula. Because there was a pocket of light there that was emergent from the akvayim in accordance with that particular body part of history that illuminated that particular space with a particular irrigation of light and Sapia Yeshua. But the true light of Mashiach Tzidkenu is found in the akvayim. It's found in the heels. Ach misham, but from that place of the heels, from the lowest place imaginable, its light illuminates and offers illumination to the rest of the body. L'chein amru, listen to what the Ramchal says. Hayom im bekolo tishma'u. Pasuk says that today, if you hearken to my voice, and Chazal tell us on Daf Tzadi Chesam and Aleph, Tzach of Sanhedrin, the Tzach of Perek Chelek, Tzach Tzachos, the purification of our Chelek, in Geula, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lem Chelek Loilam Haba, through the Tzach Tzachos, through the clarification. That's why it's on Daf Tzadi Ches in Sanhedrin. Today, if you hearken to my voice. So my voice, what does Rabbeinu Ramchal say? The voice is Hainu Bagaron. Today, if you listen to my voice, there's a way of bringing Mashiach by the voice, meaning by connecting to that element, by that time period of the voice, of the throat, when there was a time of exile. You can connect yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to Mashiach through any part of the body, any point in exile. Through the throat, through the head, through the chazah, doesn't have to be the akvayim. So we see that in spite of the fact that Mashiach Tzidkenu is dependent upon the akvayim themselves, which the Ari already is mufurish about, which Tehillim is mufurish about, Tanakh is, Raglei Mavase, Raglei Mashiach, Mitzapel Raglei Mashiach. Secret of Bayom Hahu, that the legs are going to extend Kavyachol down onto Har Zeisim, and those last Nukudos of Birur that are in the Akvayim, the Adam Kadmon, are going to be Niskala, and there's going to be a Gilui of Lamala, Lamata, and the Kisei HaKavod is going to be Niskala in the Shuk, and there's going to be a Heskalis Amiti of Enhapechu, and the secret of the Rikud of Mashiach. This element is the Rikud of Mashiach. The Rikud of Mashiach. Sorry about that. The akvayim of Adam Kadmon, the heels, are the representation of the Batler Hashvi'i, the legless beggar, the seventh beggar in Rabbi Nachman's tale of the Sheva HaBatlarim, who has yet to arrive. Mashiach is the secret of David Malka Mashiach, who teaches us how to dance. It's a secret of the Rikud of Emunah, which is learning how to have one's feet planted on the ground when there is no ground, etc., etc. And when we dance, when a person's feet hit the ground, as Rabbeinu describes in Torah Mem or Mem Aleph, in terms of the kavanah of dancing, so that the akvayim is meant to be mamtik all of the dinim of the entire body. That the shock absorption of the heel themselves has the capacity of sending the vibrations kavyachol up through the entire process, meaning to say that the akvayim, especially dancing, has an impact on the rest of the body as well. And therefore, the ikr giloy of Mashiach is in the sod of the akvayim, of the parts of the history of exile, and the heels of the history of exile at the end. But it's from there that it illuminates its light across every expanse of exile. Ach, Makoimam ha'amiti shalom Mashiachim, says the Ramchal, even though it can express itself outwards by the garon here, there, the ikr place is by the ikvayim, the ikvas of the Mashiach. V'chol hadoros hatluyim sham nikraim dara de Mashiach mamish. Any generation, any element of history that finds itself close to that time period of ikvas of the Mashiach is contained within the phrase Dara de Mashiach, the generation of Mashiach. And while it's not the Ikr Nakuda here, it's a fundamental Nakuda in the fact that because you're part of the preparation for something, you're already Nechshav as being somebody who is part of the actual thing itself. And that's why the Lubavitch Rebbe Schlusa Ganalenu said that the Ikr Mitzvah of our generation is the secret of To'amel, as we see the bilbul that's taken place with it. Of To'amel, of tasting Shabbos prior to Shabbos, because that's the secret of tasting the light of Mashiach, the ha'aros that come from the akvayim, prior to reaching the akvayim, because we're close to the akvayim, and we might not be the exact Dara de Mashiach in this moment, which we are, but we're not yet. And I only find myself in the pruz door towards Mashiach, Zak the Heilige Ramchal, to be already close. And Talui, in that place of the akvayim, is already Nachshav as Dara de Mashiach Mamish, the generation of Mashiach, the generation of redemption. Shumis kasher behem kesher gadol, and the light of Mashiach is fundamentally connected to everything in that generation, to the Torah in that generation, to the mindset of that generation, to the anxiety of that generation. The light of Mashiach saturates all of it. It's all different. It's all different. It's more intense. There's urgency. This wasn't the case beforehand, because the head is not so close to the heels. and the throat is not so close to the heels. But the more we get closer to the heels, the more we find ourselves in those worn out legs that don't know how to dance. In those legs, the legless beggar that haven't been taught how to dance, like the Shpaler Zaydis Chusel Ganalenu was taught how to dance by Eliyahu Navi and by the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, to the point that he was able to outdance the Cossack in the secret of Hop Kasok. If you're not connected to the legs, if you're not connected to the unsturdiness of the legs, then you're not going to feel the intensity of the Chevle Mashiach as much. Because then in those times, it wasn't the real ha'ara of Mashiach Mamish. It wasn't really redemption. It was just redemption was a Meshaleach ha'ara. The Akvayim were sending out a light throughout the rest of the guf. There were intimations towards redemption. But ultimately Mashiach Tzidkenu himself was not sitting there. Because it wasn't yet the Akvayim. It wasn't that the Krach Gadol Sheberomi. V'hine mitzad ha'akavos ba'osam hadoros ha'yiruyim limtzoi el chevlei Mashiach. In accordance with the attachment to the heels, to the low place of those generations, or in our generation, so too is going to be the corresponding Chevle Mashiach. The closer one gets to the Hisgalus of Mashiach, the more intense the birth pangs are going to be for that birth of Mashiach. Memela, the closer one is to a time period that has shaykhis to the light of Mashiach, the more intense the Chevle Mashiach are going to be, and that's the secret of Dar de Mashiach. Ulechein hutzrach sheyiskala az Sefer Zohar. And at that point, when the ha'ara of the Akvayim and Mashiach is oriented in the world, there's going to be Chevle Mashiach. And because the generation of Rashbi was a fundamental generation for the rest of Klal Yisrael, like Moshe Rabbeinu, L'chein hutzrach sheyiskala az Sefer Zohar, there needed to be the Zohar, there needed to be the antidote to combat that level of concealment which is shaykh to the arrival of Mashiach. This was the exact purpose of the Zohar HaKadosh, to be comfort from the storm. What's the storm? The storm is the Chevle Mashiach. What's the Chevle Mashiach? The Chevle Mashiach is the awakening of the emergence of the Akvayim down into the lowest place. And Mamela, there's going to be the birth pangs and the concealment that comes and the constriction that comes right prior to the dawn. But in the times of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, where he understood the need for this, it still wasn't close to Ikvasa de Mashiach. El Shenase B'Zman Hara'i La'asos. All of this is prepared. All of this is done in the right time. The preparation for this took place by the time of Rabbi Shimon. Our generation, Dar de Mashiach, throwing itself into the Zohar HaKadosh, is benefiting from the lights that Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Lazar Bray cultivated in the cave, which is why he spent so much time in the cave, the 12 years corresponding to the 12 Partsufim and the 12 Sirufim of the Shem Havaya, which corresponds to each and every Shevet, each and every person in accordance with their own understanding, with their own permutation of the Shem Havaya. And then 13 months afterwards to understand how to be makasher all of those yichudim of yichud, brach, and kedusha, and the secret of yabok, to fix the kav charuvin, to transform us into people who are worthy of being a baki b'ratzo and a baki b'shov, as Rabbeinu says in Torah Vav. We benefit from the light that Rabbi Shimon cultivated. This light of the Zohar HaKadosh, B'dar de Mashiach, in accordance with the Chevle Mashiach of that time period, which is us, all of that needed to be prepared. HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepares everything in its right time. Just as Yaakov Avinu, Atzei Shita Moimdim, he understood the secret of needing to carry wood out of Mitzrayim in order to build the Mishkan. The secret of Bnei Yisachar Yoideh Bina Li'itim, those neshamas who understand what's going to be in the future, and therefore they do the preparation now. Ezu Chacham Aroya Sanoilad. So it was that time period that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was cultivating the light for generations. That's the secret of Kedai Lismoch, and why all of us are as connected to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as much as the generation of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That it was all created then by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai through the Koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shu B'zman Hispashut Sachasadim and Achazu Lamata. Why? Why was Rabbi Shimon's generation Zoche? One of the elements is that was the time of the Giloi Ha'oreis Be'oifen Giloi, because it was from that Chaza. We said the generation of Rabbi Shimon was the chest area, which represents where the Levush ends, and the Oiris of Zer Anpen are able to be Miskala B'chutz, and the Chasadim are Miskala B'galoi. Because there was a Giloi there, and an opening, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was able to tap into that light to draw down the preparatory stages necessary for the binyan of the Zohar HaKadosh, which is our Tevas Noach. Ki az ne'amar miyad. Because at that point, just like we said, the Akvayim send the Ha'ara to each and every stage in reality. So at that time, in the time of the Chaz, in the time of Rabbi Shimon, when he cultivated that light, it said, L'chol b'nei Yisrael haya or b'moish v'osam. Klal Yisrael had light. There was only light. Everyone was able to partake of that light, but it was not a light that extended itself outwards yet. It was the light of the Tevas Noach. Ramchal is darshaning now the history of the revelation of the Zohar HaKadosh. And we're not going to go into it. I'll share a shir that goes into the very development of the Heilige Zohar HaKadosh as we understand it, and the secret passageways in which has been revealed to us, based on the das of the tzaddikim and Rabbeinu Bal HaSulam. But the Ramchal is asking, why was it written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and not revealed until a long time afterwards? The answer is because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was just preparing the lights for the generation of Mashiach. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was utilizing the light of Mashiach, which is the secret of the heels shining the ha'ara upwards to the rest of the body, to awaken all of those points of exile with the potential towards redemption. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Chavraya lived in a state of redemption in Tevas Noach, as the Ramchal is going to say, Pasach pichu v'ya'ir dvarecha. Children were able to speak Giloi Torah then because there was the Dara Zachia, there was the Or of Rabbi Shimon. But it wasn't time yet for it to be revealed for everybody to use in a medicinal way. It was hidden away. They had light, but it was hidden and revealed only afterwards in the time that it was really necessary, which was the generation of Hod, which was the beginning of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and it was the beginning of Kol Hayom Dava, and that emergence in the time period when the Zohar HaKadosh was revealed, which continues until our time. Once Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai created the Zohar HaKadosh at this stage, in spite of the fact that its time had not yet arrived, nevertheless, because he was the one tasked with preparing it, like we said, there's always going to be a hashpa'ah b'chutz, especially by the neshamos of Rabbi Shimon and Moshe Rabbeinu, which are those two Yechidei Hadoros who mamish we live by in the secret of Emasai Ka'asimar, the Pnimius, the Torah Shebechsav, and the Pnimius of Torah Shebechsav, which is what the Zohar HaKadosh is. Therefore, there had to be some element of benefit that took place, which was what happened in the secret of the Brecha in that generation, running into the cave. When Rashbi was Megala the Zohar, every neshama already tapped into that secret of this thing is going to give me an emergency escape hatch when I need it most, but it was not yet revealed in an experiential way. And this is what the Tikkunim say. Gam Sipor Matzabayis. Gam Sipor, Bina found the house. The Banim, the Efroichim, the Zer Anpin, and the Nukva, the real practical utilization of things, that only takes place later on. But Bina, Gam Sipor Matzabayis. Gam Sipor Matzabayis. There's a benefit for the Tikkunim that take place even prior to the redemption. But like we said, it wasn't fundamentally revealed down below in a utilizable medicinal way. But Avada, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai prepared a tremendous sweetening for exile at that point, at that stage in the Chaza. And with the Chavraya and the Or of the Zohar, it was mamish a time that was ki'ilu, it was not nichlal within Galus itself. V'hachana rabba l'geula, as well as deep preparatory work for the incoming stage of redemption. But nevertheless, it wasn't the Akavayim. It wasn't us. V'al kein amru ala Zohar HaKadosh. And therefore, says Rabbeinu Ramchal, that it's written on the Zohar, Sheyet parnasu mimenu ha'elyonim ad soif hayomim, she'az yiskalet tachtoinim ubei v'shavtem ish al achuzaso. Zohar Kadosh says that the elyonim above, the celestial realms that are not revealed in this world, the invisible element of reality, which is perpetually in a state of rectification and being rectified, the light of the Zohar has always benefited that place from the time that it's been revealed and onwards. Spooky action at a distance in a non-revealed way. How, why, in what way, we don't know, but the light of the Zohar saturates reality. The Elyonim have always benefited from the beginning towards the end, towards Sof HaYamim. But it's specifically in Sof HaYamim, Sha'az Yisgalet LaTachtoinim. It's going to be revealed in the lowest place imaginable, Ubei, and then V'shavtem Isha Lachuzaso. And then it will be revealed retroactively that light has always been revealed prior to its actual revelation, in spite of the fact that it wasn't the true thing yet. V'ne'az, in that time, in the time of Rabbi Shimon, like we said, there was a situm. It was like the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu and Mitzrayim, where we weren't ready to escape, and it was Barach Ha'am, that Moshe Rabbeinu had to run out. It was like Noah Hatzadik, who wasn't Zoiche, was Zoiche and not Zoiche at the same time. Ma'amin ve'eno ma'amin. And therefore he had the Geula, but it was a Geula within the Gullus, the secret of the ark, the secret of the Teva, which is not an undoing of exile, but it's safety within exile. Like the accidental murder in the Ir Miklat. There's still a din on their heads, but nevertheless, within the Ir Miklat, there's safety from the storm. That secret space of connectivity and the cultivation of that safe place within our minds, of the Ek, of the Anazam and the Meheve, of the Kel Shakai, of that in case of emergency break glass, that existed in the secret of the Brecha. That existed in the time of Rabbi Shimon because it was a time of concealment still. Over there it says, Ve'elikim malchi mikadim. It was still the shlita of the malchi of Edom, of the shira sakelim, of shvira, of difficulty, of brokenness. But nevertheless, poyel yeshuos bekerev haaretz, inside of the land. The world was in a state of chaos until Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came along and created the Sefer HaZohar and revealed the Sefer HaZohar, as we're going to see. Ad emas kayi alma achad samcha. How long will the world titter over on one pole, which is the secret of tohu, unsustainable balance, without the balancing act of the mitgala, of the proper balance of responsibility between left, right, and center. The land is a desolate, chaotic thing. It can't stand on itself. V'hi malchus begalus. What that means is that malchus is in exile. Malchus is in exile. And things were not revealed, and things were not the way they needed to be. It was a time of emergency. In the case of emergency, break glass, of Tevas Noach. And this is represented too by the Shem Elokim, by the secret name of Hashem, which represents itself in Teva, in concealment, Din. V'az ha-chasadim shavu la'achor. And at that time of concealment, the chasadim moved away. The chasadim were concealed to a certain degree. And at that time, in the reawakening of the Shvira Sakelim, which took place in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and the students of Rabbi Akiva, and the tikkun that took place afterwards, there's a secret that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rebbe says, was one of the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva who died. Not every single one of them died. In order for all of them to have died, not every single one of them had to. It's ba'ofen klali, it's ba'ofen shalrov. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the Talmidim of the earlier stage, and then one of the Talmidim of the new stage, because Shvira is always part of the breaking and the fixing. The breaking and the fixing are not two separate stages, but rather they are two separate ways of looking at the same thing. We clarify the brokenness of Shem Elokim, we elevate it back up to Shem Havaya, and then we draw back down Shem Havaya into Shem Elokim to reveal how that which was broken is in truth the thing that I'm experiencing now in a fixed way, that from the forest itself comes the handle for the axe. Even Zer Anpin was in a state of kinekeva. Like we said, the oiris of Zer Anpin were now totally independent in the light of Malchus, which was deficient. So even Zer Anpin was like a nekeva. Even Zer Anpin was inwards, without expression outwards, like the secret of Malchus. But in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was the creation of the Teva, Bina coming down to illuminate the light of Malchus, because their Anpin can't do it right now. Yes, we have to keep the Aleph, the Amma, Tachlena, above the Zohar Ta'asa Teva, to always return back to the normal orientation of things. But in a time of exile, it's the secret of the Teva, it's the binyan of the Zohar HaKadosh, like we said. Shebetocho nasa tikunim arabim, like we said. That it's within the cave that the tikkunim take place, besod Zohar Ta'asa L'Teva, and the secret of the Zohar Ta'asa L'Teva, because at that point, Zer Anpin itself is not even functioning. Shua Zuhara di Ima Ilah Kedapirish, which is the light of Malchus, which is light being illuminated by Bina, Hamtakas Adinim B'Sharashim. V'hu besod Elokim Dehavaya. Elokim Dehavaya, meaning to say, don't think over here that this Elokim is simply din without any orientation to the light, but rather it's the din that exists within the light itself. Elokim dehavaya. The Shem Havaya has an Elokim within it. Elokim and Havaya is Yabok. It's the same gematria as Yabok of Yichud, Bracha, and Kedusha. And the Elokim dehavaya, it's the dinim that exist within the illumination of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That secret of what? Of Bina. Bina is the din within the unlimited. Bina is dinin misabrim minei. It's the origination of limitation prior to limitation. It's the gvul within the bilti gvul. It's the Shem Elokim within Havaya. It's the Bina within Chachma. The Chacham bebina and the Havin bechachma. The Elokim dehavaya. So yes, it's expressive. It's a place of expressivity, but it's expressivity by way of concealment. It's referred to as coming from a place of masculinity, coming from a place of expression, but the expression there, unlike the typical mode of expression, which is chesed and revealed, is an expression of concealment. This is a heilige nekuda that the Ramchal is pointing out, if I'm understanding it properly. That the secret of Bina being mashpia down to Malchus is a secret of a gilui of Ada. It's coming from Bina. Bina is mashpia to Zah, it's mashpia to Malchus. Even if Zah is not working properly, nevertheless, the Giloi, like we saw, always has to go through Zer Anpin, which is the secret of the Aleph, of the Vav, Aleph, Vav. But the revelation here is an Eloikim Dahavaya. It's the Gvuros within the Chasadim. It's the Havein B'Chachma, the Bina within Chachma, the Yichud Tata within the Yichud Ilah, the Vak of the Gar, etc., etc. And so, yes, it looks like concealment, but it's still an expression of concealment, which is why it's referred to as Me'alma D'Dechura. This expressivity of Elohim comes from the place of Alma D'Dechura, a place of expansivity, which is a tremendous Nakuda. Higam Ima Nikrakach, because Bina is also referred to that, Elohim Dahavaya. Yayin B'Dechura Estaimes, Kiyadua. Bina is also referred to Dechura as masculine. Why? Because the Ikra Hashpa of Bina is to be mashpia down to Zer Anpin. Koinin Shemayim B'Tvuna. Tachlis of Bina is to be mashpia moichin to Zer Anpin, and then from Zer Anpin into Malchus. And then from Malchus all the way back up. But over here, when Bina is being mashpia down to Malchus, without the typical nature of the orientation towards Zer Anpin, it's still going to be referred to as Dechura. Why? Because the fullest expression of Bina and the Tachlis of Bina is the Banim, Eim HaBanim Smicha. And so therefore, in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in the time of the Zohar, in the time of the Zohar Ta'asa L'Teva, it was still a hashpa, but it was a hashpa b'derech tzimtzum. It was a hashpa of Eloikim Dehavaya, the din within the chesed itself, as is known. V'zeu mamish ha'inyan, says Rabbeinu Ramchal, mamish ha'inyan, the hamanin de'ima sha'ozifus lebrata, the clothing that Ima, that Bina gives over to Malchus, which we've said, Sha'az Nikras Adon Kol Haaretz. Then Bina is transferred into Adon Kol Haaretz, which is a lashon of Dechura, because that becomes the ikra place of Hashpa, in spite of the fact that it's being mashpia concealment. And this is what's happening every time that Bina is Megala herself by Malchus in the secret of that emergency situation, where Bina becomes the Hashpa, but it's a Hashpa b'derech Eloikim Dehavaya. Meaning the Havein B'Chachma, the Gvura within the unlimited capacity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. K'mefurish b'Zohar Reish Parshas Bereishis. V'alzeh Hashem Elohim Amarim, with regards to this Shem Elohim, which was Niskala in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is the Gilui of Bina down to Malchus, which is a Gilui of Ada, but it's a Gilui of Hastara, meaning to say that it's not revealed in a clear way like it will be in the Ikvas of the Mashiach. This Shem Elohim, which represents the ascendant form of Teva, which is the secret of the Tzimtzum, as the Baal Tanya describes beautifully, fundamentally, in the only way that we can learn it in Shar Yichud Ve'Amuna, in the secret of Ki Shemesh U'Magin Hashem, that the Shemesh and the Magin, the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shem Havaya, is Mulubash, is engarbed within the Shem Elohim. The Shem Elohim, as the Kli that's Magal of the Shem Havaya, has a profound koyach of being the Chashmal HaElyon, the concealment that reveals. That's the Elohim de Havaya. It's not an Elohim that's concealing, it's an Elohim that's revealing, but it's revealing by way of concealment. With regards to this Elohim, Ve'elikim Malchi Mikedem. And this is what's referred to before, and that Elohim, this light of Elohim, was shining forth from within that place of Shira, from within that place of the Malchi Kedem. Why? Because who sowed Kedem? It's the secret of moving from the top to the bottom, as opposed to the bottom from the top. Kedem, beside Kedem, Achor v'Kedem Tzartani, that I created them forwards and backwards. Kedem is forwards. Bina is mashpil me'lamalu lamata, up, down from above, in spite of the fact that it's still feminine in its essence and concealed. Nevertheless, it's in the secret of Dechura. It's in the secret of expressivity. So it's the expressivity of concealment. It's not simply the concealment of Malchus, which is actual concealment, but it's the expression of concealment. It's the secret of the Simsum. The whole secret of the Simsum is totally in Bina itself, as we read in this week's Haftorah. Secret of Simsum obviously is in this week's Haftorah of Nachamu Ami, because Nachamu is Gematria Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the Shorosh of Simsum, and the secret of Simsum is in this week's Parsha, in this week's Haftorah, Mi Madad B'Sha'alomayim, that who measured with a measuring stick in the water a space. Mi madad b'sha'alomayim zakta heliga ariza on mavoi sha'arim, that this is the secret of Bina Elyoina being the secret of the Tzimtzum, this secret of Eloikim, a gilui of Hester, but not a typical Hester that means something is missing, a revelation of Hester. V'zeh poyel Yeshuas, and this is the secret of Elokim. B'malchei kedem, there's a secret of Elokim, of a revelation of concealment by way of Bina, when Zer Anpin is not functioning properly as a result of Malchei kedem. Nevertheless, there's still going to be poyel Yeshuos. There's still going to be the active participation of Yeshuos, which the Zohar Kadosh explains is the secret of Hamtakas Adinim B'Sharashim when Malchus goes back up to Bina. Because it's specifically then that the rectifications of the Zohar began and all of the battles that come along with it. We're going to see the battles and the weaponry necessary for entering into the Zohar Kadosh, as Rashbi is going to be Magal and the Ramchal will build upon. All of the battles that the Zohar Kadosh fights began then. That's the Poyel Yeshuos. That's the secret of Bina being mashpia down the mata, in spite of the fact that it's not yet time for Geula, and Bina is still Eloikim and concealment, but nevertheless it's the Eloikim de Havaya, which is the secret of the Hashpa'a Melamal Lamata, in spite of the fact that it appears to be concealment. That's the light of the Zohar Kadosh, really teaching us how concealment is not concealment. But still, it was only on the interiority of the aretz. Begoy legoy, it was concealed. It was within the cave. Bekerev haaretz. And the secret of Rav Himnuna Saba and the Levyasan, as the Balatani explains, that there's certain tzaddikim. The Levyasan tzaddikim are performing unifications in hidden ways, and then there's the tzaddikim of the Shor Habar who are performing unifications in revealed ways. But at that point, it was still mayim b'mayim, goy legoy. The secret of the Teva, that everything is taking place internally but not being revealed outside yet. This is what was taking place in the generation of Rashbi, when the Zohar Kadosh was revealed and prepared but not revealed, developed but not revealed. So now, says Rabbeinu Ramchal, we understand very clearly what the Zohar Kadosh is. The Zohar Kadosh is a gilui of Bina down into Malchus, when the typical order of things, which is Bina to Zer Anpin to Malchus, which is the typical normal mode of functioning, is no longer taking place in a revealed way, and there's an emergency situation, and we pull the fire alarm, and we give ourselves that light of the Eish of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That's what the light of the Zohar is. Not only is the light of the Zohar that emergency awakening, but it's one that becomes available on a wholesale level, Kavyachol, to Klal Yisrael, in the secret of the Zohar HaKadosh. It's the first Gilui, other than Moshe Rabbeinu's, in Torah Shebechsav, which is much more concealed, because it was the beginning. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the first real gilui of the accessibility to this light on a wholesale way when people enter into the Zohar Kadosh, which is for our generation of Dara de Mashiach. The Almahu Na'aseh. We also understand how it was developed in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Chaverov in the cave, and all of the tikkunim that were taking place, like the Tevas Noach and the Ma'aras Rashbi and the Ir Miklat. Kihu Sod HaTeva. Kihu Besod Teva. It's in the secret of the Teva, where it happened. She'ema mispashesas b'toichem nukva afilu b'hayosi b'galus. That Bina is mispashet down into Malchus, even though we're still in exile. V'nasa hazor besod Ir Miklat, and the Zohar HaKadosh was made in the form of an Ir Miklat, the city of refuge, kedei livroich bo min hagalus. Shekol habayreich bo lo yitztarech l'chavle Mashiach livroich habrecha acheres shal tshuva. And anyone who runs there will not need to go through the difficulty of Chevle Mashiach, because that's the recipe for survival in the times of Chevle Mashiach. And that's the secret of running away before having to actually run away. Running into the Zohar HaKadosh because there's no other option is already the secret of tshuva. Which reveals itself in the times of great need, great urgency, as I explained earlier. Almost through with this element of the Adir BaMarom. Either this week or next week, we will go through what the Ramchal is going to be masbir, the secret of the Zohar, and the various parts of the Zohar, and the elements of the Zohar, and what each one means, Reisha de L'Osyada, and the Safed Tzniusa, and the Idraba, and the Idrzuta, and the Raya Mehemna, and the Tikkunei Zohar, and the Gufa Zohar, and the Sabed Mishpatim, and the Sabed Mishkana. We're going to see how each and every one of them represent different Giluyim that were necessary back then for the sake of survival in exile, and more than powerfully in our generation, how they're necessary for the actual arrival as we find ourselves in that place of Ikvas of the Mashiach, in the Akvayim Mamish, where it's no longer just a Ha'ara of Mashiach, but rather we're getting to the place where it's Mamish, the Giloy of the Akvayim, the secret of the legless beggar, the dancing beggar, the seventh beggar, Mashiach ben David, the secret of Nachamu Nachamu. Be'ezras Hashem, we'll go from there to begin to understand the introduction to the Idra Rabbah. Be'ezras Hashem.